Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. All projections are wrong, but some are useful. Dallas?
Thanks, Michael. This is I actually don't know where this quote comes from. I think it's a phrase out of like chaos theory or one of these very involved sciences where they have models of how things will behave. And so you simulate things and you have models of what's going to happen. And the phrase they say is, all models are wrong, but some are useful. So the theory is, once you model something that's complex, it doesn't actually play out that way. However, it's a useful framework of thinking about things. And obviously, as everything does, it reminded me of financial planning for retirement. So the analogy there that I say where all projections are wrong, but some are useful, is there's a thing, and we've talked about this before, there's a thing that I think financial advisors are guilty of, and you know, there's no other way to do it, is we've got the dreaded spreadsheet. So we've got the spreadsheet that shows what will happen. And where I say all projections are wrong, but some are useful, is that we have to do something to compare different strategies. And that's, I guess, the key for me here, is that when I say all projections are wrong, if I do a nice, neat projection to go, you're here now at 55, and this is where you should get to at 65, we always use roughly, you should be roughly there, and it'll be in the ballpark of this or in the ballpark of that. Now, we do not want to dance around the fact that projection is wrong. It is not going to be correct. I've shown nice, neat lines of you're here, and then at the end of year one, you're here, and then here, and then year two. So that projection is 100% going to be incorrect. It is not going to be precise. It is not going to be correct in any way, shape, or form. However, it is useful in terms of comparing different strategies. And this sort of ties into a previous podcast we talked about, where something being directionally right is more important than precision. So if I do one projection that shows, hey, this is where you're going to be in 10 years' time, and then I do another projection to show, if you were to max out your concessional contributions each year, get as much before tax money as you can in super, and I show that putting more money into super will probably get you about $500,000 better off, if we make a few changes to how that money gets invested, and we max out your before tax contributions to super, and we do those things, you're probably going to be on average $500,000 better off. Now, there is pretty much no chance that you're actually going to be $500,000 exactly better off. It could be 450, could be any amount, it could be different. We thought you might get at 2 million, you might be at 2.3, it could be at 1.8. We have no idea what that's going to be. Where it is really useful is when I go, okay, you're going to be this strategy, the proposed strategy, is very, very likely to put you in a far better position than the current strategy. So where I say it's wrong, but it's useful, is that all the projection is meant to do, or all of those calculations are meant to do, is to inform your decisions right now. So if I look at those two projections, I go, right, they're both wrong, but what I can infer from looking at them is that I should probably take action that's going to put me more in line with the second option, where I'm going to be closer to where I need to be to retire, rather than doing what I'm currently doing, which is it's most likely to put me on track to be below where I need to be. That's I think, so part one of my theory here is that a projection is only really useful to show a very, very, very rough ballpark of where you might end up in 10 years' time. And it's where it's actually more useful is to compare strategies, to compare what if I did this instead. That's really all projections are good for. And so that's, I guess, the main takeaway that I wanted to give today, is that we use projections, and everyone does, and every other financial advisor and every other industry does. There's a projection of things, but it's not. You cannot. It's going to be wrong. And that's the only way to accept it. It
will be wrong because life's complicated.
Yes, and
there's so many inputs that go into those projections. So the inputs are the average returns.
Yep.
of your investment strategy, the sequence of those returns, so actually how they come about, tax law, other legislation, but
your income,
but your own life. So the biggest, by far the biggest variable out of all that. So people think of variables being
things out of their
market
control.
returns, or things out of their control, or the market dropping, or the biggest variable is our complicated lives as human beings.
Yes,
and whether we're offered a job promotion, or we get sick and we can't work. Whether one of us dies, whether hopefully not in the short term, but whether something breaks around the house significantly, whether termites eat the place, all of those types of things, whether we get a redundancy, whether it takes us 6 months to find a new job, or whether it takes 2 days. So that's by far the biggest weighting factor out of all of that is that, and whether we can stick to the strategy, or whether we panic during different periods of time. So that's you're right. Projections are inherently wrong. The second they're spat out, they're wrong already. It sort of reminds me of the classic Churchill quote that democracy is the worst form of government ever devised, excepting for all others. It is. It's terrible. It's a terrible form of government. It's better than a dictatorship. Far better. That's sort of where you're coming across. You'll be better off. As long as you're better off than what you were going to be by a margin, and that's all you need to be worried about.
I think the point you make is a really good one, because I've just got a note here if people come to see us for the first time and they're 2 years from retirement, or a year, or like I've got a new client who's coming in next week, or just seen some notes there, they are retiring in, I think, 6 months' time. And so if you're retiring in 6 months' time, you can be fairly confident you can be fairly confident on what you will want in 6 months' time, and you can be fairly confident on what your employment situation will be for the next 6 months, and what your income needs will be for the next 6 months. So that makes it easy. What we don't know is over a 6 month period, investment returns in particular are completely variable. Like it's not even, it could be up or down by 30. The average company price could be up or down by 30% over the next 6 months quite easily. So the phrase that I've written down here myself is basically, the closer that you are to retirement, the more likely your investment return that we plug in will be wrong. The further away from retirement, and this is, I think, counterintuitive, the further you are from retirement, the more likely you are to achieve something approximating an average return. So for someone who's 30 now, if we look back throughout hundreds of years of history of company share price growth, if you go, right, well, I've got 50 years, you're probably going to be within a percent either way of what that long-term average is. If you shrink that investment time frame, you get more variability on outcomes. And so there's all sorts of different, we've talked about this before, of over pretty much any 30-year period, your investment returns are very similar.
They're very, very, very similar. Narrow band.
Very narrow band. Over shorter time frames, they're very variable.
Well, I think I've seen a graph before. I'm sure I have. It's not exactly this, but the highest 1 year return of companies is plus 110%.
Yep.
And the worst 1 year return is minus 57%.
Yep.
Now those two things are the same thing.
Yes.
Funnily enough,
exactly
so
my point,
you take something that's worth $100 and you have a minus 50% return.
Yeah.
It drops to $50.
Yep.
Okay, so you take something that's $100 and plus 100% return.
Yep.
It doubles.
Yes.
So it halves or it doubles.
Yep.
So it's the same thing.
Yeah.
So that's the variant. That's the 1 year variance. So you're right, Dallas. So within a 6 month period, you could be up, 50%,
which I think is very.
Or you could be down.
It's counterintuitive because people go, "I'm 6 months from retirement. I've got more certainty of what my super balance is." Well, not really, because if we're looking 10 years out, regardless of what happens in the next 6 months, we're probably going to get somewhere closer to that long-term return. But the other point that I think is, so when people go, we're 10 years out from retirement, who knows what the market's going to do over the next 10 years? I go, well, I actually have more confidence in knowing what company prices will do over the next 10 years compared to the next 6 months. So that's not as big of a worry to me over the next 10 years.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And you're a net purchaser as well over that period of time, which what that means is you're not drawing, you're purchasing more than you've ever purchased. Yeah. So when there is variability, like you're purchasing into a declining price, you're purchasing more.
Yeah. The second part of that is exactly what you touched on, which is that if I'm 10 years from retirement, the thing that is, people are worried about the volatility of those returns of, will we get 8% or will it be? I'm not really worried about that at all, because I know it's going to be somewhere in the ballpark over, especially over 10 years, but then over 20, 30 years, which is your lifespan.
Yep.
The way that I think about this is that what people don't take into account is that the projections of your personal situation. And to me, there's two parts of this. There's, like you touched on before, your income and your expenses is we think we know, I'm 10 years from retirement, I'm on $120,000 a year now, I'm going to be on that for the next 10 years, and we spend $73,000 a year, and I'm going to spend that amount every year indexed inflation. It doesn't happen like that at all. We all know, and I used to do this exercise with clients, would say, look back 5 years, and did you think 5 years ago that your financial situation and your income and your expenses would be what they are now? And invariably, it's completely different. And yet, when we get 10 years from retirement, we go, no, it's going to be the same for the next 10 years. So that's part one of it, which is that your personal situation is very likely to change substantially over that last 10 years. The other part of it that's going to change substantially is, I think, your goals or your objectives, or what it is that you're most focused on or trying to achieve. And this is the other part of it that we see is, again, we like these nice, neat things of, okay, retiring at 65 with $80,000 a year in today's dollars, which is 110. Like, it doesn't work like that either, because what you thought that you wanted in 10 years' time and what you actually want are often two different things. And so that's the other part of the projection, is to go, and I've said this in many podcasts previously, where let's just assume that you're going to live a similar lifestyle to what you live now, because that's the best. Again, it's wrong, but it's the most useful, or it's the most likely to be in the right band. But the reality is, what you actually want, what's important to you, and what's achievable, are going to be vastly different in 10 years' time. So that's going to change as well. So I think this is one of those things where there's no real action item off the back of this for me, other than to just accept that, these projections or these assumptions or even the plan that we have, it's wrong. Like you said, the minute that it's produced, it's wrong. But is it a useful way to help you make decisions now? And if it's, I've had this before with, when you're looking at, you plug in 8% rate of return over the next 10 years or 20 years or whatever, and someone will go, what happens if you plug in 10%? You go, well, it's irrelevant. Like you might actually get 10%, but that's not. We can't do anything. It doesn't inform our decision right now in any way, shape, or form. So I think that's probably my point from today is, all human beings want certainty. We want to know, right, there's going to be this at the end of year one, I'll be here and I'll be here and I'll be here. And like we said, we draw a nice, neat line saying you're at 700,000 in retirement savings. You're going to get to 2 million. This is the plan. This is the projection. We have to accept that is inherently going to be wrong the minute it's produced. But the real reason we do that is to give us the data we need to make the decisions we need to make now, and to stick to those decisions while things stay the same.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. For more information and resources, visit the Money Over 50 website, mo50.com.au. We look forward to catching up again soon.